patient, and also being careful what part of the body you take. So those are some of the ways where confidentiality can be breached. So social media, digital health records, telephone calls, texting patients, emailing patients, and when you process or store images. Those are all examples. We've also seen this explosion of doctors educating the public, not just doctors, nurses as well, healthcare professionals. And to be honest, sometimes it makes me feel quite uncomfortable when I see all this advice on social media about different things, because each patient is unique. So I always say, make sure that your advice you're giving is really generic. Be really careful, because not all guidelines are also the same. And when you're giving patient examples, don't use patient identifiable information, which can include your location. It can include just specific description of the patient. Just being really, really careful. So I'm rushing through it, but those are some of the ways where, for me, as a doctor of many, many years, I'm really careful on social media to say, whatever I'm writing, if I want to share an experience with someone, can anybody identify this patient? If I say, I saw somebody in Lagos, on Victoria Island, and if I give enough descriptors, somebody may just know. Somebody might say, somebody was talking about you. Is that you? Be very, very careful. So I'm going to pause it there, because there's 3 speakers and we have only an hour and a half. And I just wanted to share with you about the age that we're in. The main thing for all of you to understand is that there is multiple avenues to breach patient confidentiality. And the responsibility is on you not to do that, because in some countries you will lose your license if you breach patient confidentiality. The other thing is that there are only very few times where you must breach it. If you think there's a crime that is being committed, if you think that the patient is a risk to themselves or a risk to the public, and you're getting the authorities involved, that's another time where you have to breach confidentiality. And many times I tell the patient if I have to do that. And that's where I will stop today. I'm going to go off in about 5 or 10 minutes, but I'm more than happy to take questions now, or you can send your questions via the chat and we can talk about it more. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simi. I'd like to say that Dr. Simi had taken time out to be here with us today, because she had already said she would not be able to commit the full 1 hour, 30 minutes to us. And we're very, very grateful that despite her busy schedule, she was still able to join us. Thank you so much. Even though it was quite brief, we have learned a lot from you. I would like to go on and ask further questions, but I know that time is not really on your side.
Yeah. You can ask me a question. I've got 5 minutes to answer questions, and then I can answer the rest by text on the chat. I'll stay in the background, but I just won't be able to be on video with you guys.
Okay. So we would like to throw it open to our audience. If anybody has a question to ask, it will be fine to ask now. But if there is no question coming from the audience, it can come later on for Dr. Simi, since she'll still be around in the chat. But if there is no question, I'd like to ask, do you think, Dr. Simi, that there is a difference between how we see or we handle patient confidentiality in Nigeria and how it is handled outside of the country? I just want to know, because sometimes, So
yeah, there's a massive difference. I practice both in Nigeria, I practice in the UK, and there's a whole lot of difference. And I find in Nigeria, sometimes some doctors even talk to the parents about, you have a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old, and they tell the parents what's gone on. We're much looser about confidentiality in Nigeria, because there's no consequence to that behavior, and that's because there's still a kind of massive respect for doctors. I don't know if there's nurses in the audience, so just ignore me when I say doctors. There's a massive respect for the medical profession, and we get away with a lot of things that doctors outside the country do not get away with. And I think I love what you're doing, MedLaw. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I normally would not accept invitations like this. It takes ages, but when I saw that, I was like, this is so important. And I think this is an opportunity to set the trend for the medical practice in Nigeria, that actually our patients deserve better. Our patients deserve to be held, to trust us. Our young children, people who are 15 to 18 deserve to be able to trust us, that will keep their information secret, and we just don't take it seriously enough. And doctors, unfortunately, get away with much more than we should in Nigeria. It's getting better, but I think if you did that in another country like the UK, you will be in contempt. You will be sent to the GMC. There will be a massive problem about it. So love what you're doing, and now it's time to set the trend because Nigerian patients deserve better.
Thank you very much, Dr. Simi. Thank you for, bringing all that out. And thank you for the excellent work that you do, both in Nigeria and in the UK. Thank you very much. So we'll be moving on very quickly to our next speaker. We'll be moving on to be inviting Ms. Owoyemi. Ms. Owoyemi is representing Mr. Ridwan Oloyede. He'll be joining us later on, but we'll just want Ms. Owoyemi, I beg your pardon, to speak to us from a legal and data protection standpoint. Ms. Owoyemi, if you're here, you can just indicate, please.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good day, wherever you're joining us from. Just give me a moment. I'll be presenting my screen.
Oh, great.
Hello, everyone. So good day once again. My name is Oladotun Owoyemi, and I'll be speaking in the behalf of Ridwan Oloyede. So today we'll be looking at the topic more from a data protection perspective, what is expected of health organizations and healthcare providers as an organization, from the standpoint of view as data controllers or data processors, so to speak. So data controllers are those who determine how data is being processed, and data processors are those who process data in the behalf of data controllers. So why is this important? It's important to understand this so that you can know your obligation as an organization, be it an healthcare provider or a staff in an healthcare provider, and also your rights or what you can also do as a data subject. That's the person whose data is being processed. So how can we actually preserve patient confidentiality in the digital era? That means that, first of all, we need to look at what is confidentiality. And Dr. Simi has spoken quite some to confidentiality. It's simply what you can do to ensure that the privacy of the data subjects, permit me when I say data subjects, I just mean the patient, so I can use it interchangeably. So it simply means what you can do to ensure that the privacy of the patient is being upheld, either through how you store the data, how you secure it, and how you process it generally. So confidentiality is key to ensuring or to boosting trust between healthcare providers and patients. And it also speaks to how much of security measures are in place in that organization. So we're going to be looking at some of the laws that speak to medical data or speaks to confidentiality in the medical space. We're going to also be looking at security measures you can employ to ensure that data is well protected or it's kept confidential. So these are some of the frameworks or some of the laws that regulate health data in Nigeria. And if you look through it, you see quite a number of them. Some are outdated, some are outdated in that they're like years ago. They need to be updated. They need to be updated to show more current trends in this space. We now have like a wild use of electronic health records, and we have a lot of health techs coming up. So some of these laws do not reflect those things, but these are the laws we have in place currently. And I will just emphasize a few of them. The National Health Act of 2014 speaks to privacy and confidentiality a whole lot. And then if you look at section 26, you will see what is confidentiality, what is expected of you as a medical health professional or provider. Then if you also look at the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, last year we had the Nigeria Data Protection Act being enacted. So that's the most current framework for data protection in Nigeria. And it speaks robustly around data personal data, under which health data comes to play, and has been defined as a sensitive data. So sensitive data, it just means any form of data that has been defined so according to the law. And it also describes data that can lead to some form of bias or prejudice against the owner of the data. So when we say that health data is sensitive data, it means that if your health information becomes public knowledge, there can be some kind of bias against you, or suddenly somebody knows that you have this particular symptom or this particular ailment. There's a way they can raise an eyebrow, or it can even lead to loss of job in some situations. So health data has been defined as sensitive data. That means that there is a need to put more protection for processing health data or medical data. So emphasis on the National Health Act and then the Nigerian Data Protection Act. The NDPA, that's the Nigerian Data Protection Act, is not included in this image, but it was enacted recently, that's last year, and it's a major talking point or major provision for data or personal data in Nigeria. So having looked at these laws, what then is expected of us, or how can we ensure that confidentiality is upheld in medical data? How can we ensure data protection measures are implemented, either as the healthcare provider or as the receiver of this provision of health data? So first of all, security or confidentiality in this case is emphatically, how are you securing the data? What are the measures, the cybersecurity measures you've put in place? Then also, how are you storing the data in a way that ensures that it cannot be hacked into or there is no unlawful access? So let's look at consent management. Consent management speaks to how you obtain consent from the data subject or the patient. So let me draw reference to what Dr. Simi was mentioning. So she said that you can process personal data or health data in this case under certain scenarios where the patient has given consent, when it has to do with public interest, when, for example, COVID-19, it could cause harm to an entire nation. So you might need to access some people's or some data subjects' personal data. Like the first person who was infected, he didn't have to give consent for his data to be accessed. So that can lead to public, draws inference to public interest. So these are situations where your data may be processed or may be accessed without your express consent. Another situation is also vital interest, where the patient is in a life and death situation. You might also need to have access to their personal data without their express consent. So when you think about consent, you need to know that consent is not the only basis for accessing personal data. So consent management, how you obtain consent, have you informed the patient of how you want to process their data, how it's going to be secured? So when you go to an hospital, when you are interfacing with an healthcare provider, they need to explain to you in detail how your data is going to be used, how it's going to be processed, who are they going to share this data with, who are the third parties that are going to have access to this data. So all of this falls within the ambit of consent management or informed consent. Data minimization also says that the healthcare provider should only collect that which is necessary for them to provide that healthcare solution. So don't collect data just because it's easy to collect. Collect only what is necessary to treat the patient at that particular point in time. And a case in point might be maybe you have gone to the hospital to have a general checkup done. You know, it's advised that you do a general checkup often in the year. And then when your data is being collected, your height, your weight, your BMI, and all of that, and then maybe they're also asking you, okay, your next of kin data, that is also necessary. But then they're asking you for your hometown address. Oh, where are you from? Where's your state of origin? Can you give me the address of your hometown? That is already excess information. You don't need that in that particular situation. So it's advised that you minimize data solely to what is necessary for you to deliver that particular solution or that particular healthcare provision at that point in time. So why this is important is because when you have adopted data minimization, you can reduce the extent to which, or the extent of an impact when there is a breach or when there's a privacy breach, when there's an incident, maybe an hacker has hacked into the system or into your server server and has stolen volumes of data, the data or the impact on the data subject is going to be reduced because you have collected data that is only necessary for the particular processing. Legal compliance, so inference to all the laws I had previously displayed or talked about. You also need to pay attention to what the law says and what you need to do. What are your obligations as an organization? What are the protections or rights that are available to you as a data subject? Next, we have confidentiality, integrity, and availability. This used to be called the security triad, but now it's not really the triad because there are now four of them. The last one is resilience. So confidentiality, which is the topic of today, speaks to how you are securing or how you are ensuring that data access to data is limited to who needs to know. So your processing should be on a need-to-know basis. So it's not everyone in the organization that needs to have access to every patient's data. Maybe you've gotten to the front desk, your data has been collected. Those who are in certain offices don't need to have access to that data. It's just between the collector, maybe the front desk, and the doctor, and then the patient. Every other person who needs to have access on a need-to-know basis. Why do you need to have access to this data before you have access? Because as we go on, we'll see like other security issues that can come up and how confidentiality can be breached when you don't limit access to personal data on a need-to-know basis. You have cases of insider threats when a malicious person has shared data with a third party, or maybe unintentionally. You work in an healthcare organization, and maybe because you took your laptop home, someone has asked you, oh, can I quickly do this on your system? And they happen to stumble on some personal data of patients in the organization. So you see that all of these securities needs to be put in place at different points. Next, we have integrity. Integrity is also part of security measures. You need to ensure that data remains accurate at every point in time and also up to date. So when a woman has gotten married, you need to also update her status on your health records so that it's not showing health records of 5 years ago. It needs to be up to date at every point in time. These are measures to ensure that your security is up and tight. The last one is availability. Availability speaks to how available is the data when you need it. Can users access their data at every point in time when it's necessary? How often do you have downtime? And because when you have downtimes, these are also loopholes or times where you can actually suffer a cybersecurity incident because your systems are not up and running. So all of these that I've mentioned, they have different roles they play in ensuring confidentiality to personal data or to secure medical data in this particular situation. The last thing we'll talk about is how you can how you can undo data breaches or how you can ensure accountability in the digital healthcare space. So what are the measures to put in place? Some of which I've emphasized before. I've mentioned security a couple of times. So what are these security measures and how can you implement them? The first one is prevention mechanisms. It's actually better to prevent than to remediate because the cost of prevention is always lesser than the cost of remediation. When there has been a breach, you have to explain to your patients or to your users of a platform or to those that use your system that, oh, we have put in place security measures and all of that, which can be avoided when you have put in place enough prevention mechanisms. So some of the prevention mechanisms include implementing a robust security cybersecurity system. So this will include the firewalls, encryption, access controls. Access controls cannot be overemphasized. Not everyone needs to have access to all forms of patients' data. Another one is also to conduct regular security audits. You need to ensure that you are checking how tight is your security measures, how defensive is your firewall protection. So once you've implemented this, the next one is also to ensure that all staff are trained. Everyone who works in your organization needs to be trained on cybersecurity measures because when they are trained, they have a keen eye for when there is an unusual activity in your system or in your database. So for example, someone works at the front desk and they have observed that their system or their laptop has glitched like twice, but they don't pay any attention to it because you just feel like, oh, it could be one of those things. But the ideal thing, if they were trained, is to report immediately to the IT department. Let them know that, oh, there has been unusual activity today. You're not really sure why. Maybe they can look into it. And the IT team would in turn, run a security on audit across the security measures in place to ensure that everything is still up and running, and patches are also in place to ensure that there is no loophole, because it's when there's a loophole that there's a likely incident of a security breach. And to put some examples around it, okay, maybe when I'm done going through the slides, and I'll give you some examples. The next one is detection tools. You need to ensure that you've deployed certain detection tools so that when there is an intrusion, your system naturally flags it or automatically flags it. This would also help you to monitor all the activities around your digital system. So with the advent, or with the continuous progressive adoption of digital systems, we have people using AI systems, we have people using electronic health records and similar digital devices. You have your phone connected to your wearable device, your Apple Watch, to track your what is it called, your BMI per time, to track your heartbeat per time, your walking pace, and how everything is faring across your system. So with this progressive adoption of digital medical devices, there's also the need, or because it raises the likelihood of more breaches, it increases the likelihood of a cyber attack to your database or to your medical data. So you need to ensure that you've adopted or you've deployed a lot of intrusion detection systems, so that when there's an unusual activity, it is flagged, or when there's an unusual pattern, it's also flagged. These are things that your IT system or your IT guys need to pay more attention to. The last one is a response plan. So in the case where a breach has occurred, there has been somebody has been able to enter into your system and maybe has stolen a copious amount of data, or troves of medical data. How do you respond? What are the measures in place to ensure that you are able to come back in time? So first of all, you need to have an incident response plan in place, and this would also involve your IT team and every other team that needs to be involved, such as your comms team and data protection team, if you have one, your legal team, because when there is an incident or when there is a data breach, there is a period of time within which you need to notify the data subject, within which you need to notify the supervisory authorities, as the case may be. The next thing also is to also have identity theft protection in place. So oftentimes we see situations where medical data has been stolen with the bit or with the intention to commit an identity fraud. Sometimes they use it, and these are examples I wanted to give earlier. Sometimes they use it for a ransomware attack, such that they're asking you to pay an huge amount of money for retrieving those data that has been stolen. Other times, it is used to commit identity fraud, where somebody goes to act as a particular person in another place, or to gain access to health treatment plan, or to gain access to your HMO and what have you. And then other situations, maybe high profile cases where it's a public figure's personal data that has been stolen, you would often see cases where they will be threatened to either expose the data or to publish it if a ransom is not paid, and all of that. So these are prevention mechanisms, and these are ways in which you can ensure that a data breach is well contained. Also, these are measures to ensure internal accountability within your organization, and also accountability to the data subjects or patients in this particular case. So with this, I've been able to cover the laws and also some security measures you can put in place to ensure that confidentiality is upheld in your organization. So I will take some questions now, but before that, I want to know if you've been able to follow, because I want to give you some examples and practical everyday examples. But before that, I want to take some questions from the audience. So any questions? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you, Mr. Femi, can you just unmute yourself from your end and ask your question, please?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Am I audible?
Very well, you are.
Thank you. Called snooping, all right? They call it employee snooping. That is, they go ahead and check files like you spoke about the front desk. This is a practical life example. I needed, I needed, I needed my a nephew's medical information very urgently. So I spoke to um, like she's not a nurse, but she works in the hospital, and she said, "No problem, I'm gonna get it for you." So it's called snooping. So how do we guard against that? As much as we seek to protect data. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that question, Femi. So a few things I emphasized earlier that will come into play in this situation is access controls. So the person whom you've asked about particular information, who has granted access or who has given you that information, either ought not to have access or should not have shared that information. So access controls imply that only those who need to have access to the data part time have access to it. So not everyone in the organization should be able to access all patient data. And access should also be revoked when the purpose for which access was granted has been fulfilled. So one of the ways that organizations can prevent this kind of snooping is to implement robust access controls across the system, across their electronic health records, such that not everyone in their organization has access to personal data. So that's one very good way to reduce or to eliminate employee snooping.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Modupe Ola, if you can please unmute and ask your question, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was really very enlightening because I've been trying to follow data protection in Nigeria for some time, but here and there. So thank you so much for that. My question is has to do with the data protection law in Nigeria, like you referenced. I just want to know, it's like a 2-3 part question, so I'm so sorry if it's taking so long, but I want to know, are there like enforcement mechanisms in place, like provided by the law, or maybe sanctions in case of data breaches? That's the first one. And the second part of that question is like a follow-up. So I know, because I'm quite familiar with data protection law in the EU and in the UK. If there is a breach, for example, in the UK now, so what a data controller can do is, instead of letting a data subject report you or somebody reporting you, if you report yourself, it could exclude you from some sanctions. And you need to also prove to the supervisory authority that, oh, I've done this and this just to mitigate, the situation. So are there like duties or responsibilities on the part of the controller in Nigeria, like something they can do just to exclude themselves from those sanctions if it's in place? And the third one is, I don't know if, I just want to know the supervisory authority in Nigeria. Would it be the police, or is there like a separate authority in charge of that? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your question, Modupeola. So I'll start from the third one and then go up. You're asking for the regulatory authority. So the regulatory authority for data protection in Nigeria is the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, the NDPC, Nigeria Data Protection Commission. So you can look them up on all social media platforms. You would easily find them. Your next question is, what measures or what duties do controllers have or are in place for controllers to ensure that the impact of maybe a breach can be mitigated? So you gave example of notification in other countries. So it's a similar thing here. There is a notification timeline for data protection breaches. When there is a breach, I mentioned it that there is a timeline within which you should notify the data protection authority, which is the NDPC, and also there's a timeline in which you should notify the data subjects, who are the patients in this particular case. So if you notify the supervisory authority within that timeline, stating the breach that occurred, how it occurred, and the measures are in place to mitigate the impact of the breach, they would receive your report to either watch how much progress you are making as an organization to mitigate that breach before they now choose to step in. So if you are doing good work in mitigating the breach, the likelihood of a sanction is reduced. They might not sanction you depending on the impact of the breach, but if it has a lot of impact and they can also trace that the reason for the breach is because you were negligent, you did not perform what is expected of you. I'm sorry, someone's speaking.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm just responding to what you're saying. I'm getting you. I'm taking notes, so that's why, sorry.
Okay, so if they observed from your report and from what can see that you did not impose sanctions, the Data Protection Act, and there are notification measures that can be used that are required of data controllers. Data processors will report to the controllers, who will then report to the commission, due to enforce when there is a breach or when your right has been infringed upon. So first of all, you can let the organization know. This is what you call a data subject rights request. So you exercise your right. You either tell them that you don't want them to process your data anymore. And if you look at the Nigeria Data Protection Act, you'll find all these rights outlined there. You have the right to either request that your data is no longer being processed, right to delete your data, right to port your data. That means you're asking them to send your data from their own organization to another organization because you want to either switch hospitals or switch healthcare providers. You also have the right to ask them, what data do you really have of me? And they will provide all of this information from you. So if you look at the Data Protection Act, you'll find all these rights outlined there. So one of those rights includes the right to lodge a complaint. So you can complain to the supervisory authority that your right has been infringed upon, or you try to exercise your rights and it wasn't attended to timely. Then another thing that is common is that you see a lot of civil society organizations petitioning the commission. They're telling the commission that this organization has infringed on the rights of data subjects in this and this and these ways, and they're asking the commission to take action against them. So you can lodge complaint either directly, as a person, as an individual, or you can go to a civil society organization if you want to, but you have that right to actually lodge complaint to the organization, to the supervisory authority. I mean to say, you have that right to reach out to them, send them an email, reach out to them on social media, whatever platform you choose. You have the right to reach out to them and let them know that your right has been infringed upon, or this organization is not paying keen attention to data protection measures, and you don't feel your data is secured and all of that, and they will take action from that. So, Modipa, is that all right? Okay, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one question from Erere Ayeno. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced the name, but I'll just quickly read out the question. She or he says, what recommendations do you have that the current legal framework in Nigeria can adopt to improve medical data security in Nigeria?
All right, thank you very much, Erere. So one of the things that we prioritize is awareness. People need to know more about all of this that we're talking about. They need to know more about data protection rights, and they also need to know the current state of the law. Then after that, we can now begin to push for amendments. So people need to speak up more about the law being revised. We have a lot of organizations that are talking, similar to what MedLaw is doing, like this kind of awareness. Once people are educated, we can now begin to clamor that these laws are being updated. So when we have the laws updated, they would cater to the current framework or the current state we have in terms of medical healthcare and medical technology. So we have a lot of advancements now, but the laws we have in place do not cover it or do not provide for it. So one recommendation that I would, put forward to ensure that these laws can be improved upon or be amended is that everyone needs to speak up. Everyone in this webinar needs to speak up so that the regulators know that people are clamoring for it. So now they need to do something about it. Oftentimes, some areas are left unattended to because maybe the regulators feel like what they have is still working and just laid back about it. But once there is a push for amendments, once there is a push for newer laws or amendments to the current laws, we can now begin to see improvements according to global standards. And another thing that maybe I would recommend is maybe writing the authorities of these different spaces. So for data protection, we have the Nigeria Data Protection Commission, as I mentioned. For data for healthcare, generally, we have like different commissions and different bodies that sit over different areas of healthcare sectors. So we can also write them, we can also petition them that, oh, there has been this kind of infringement, or there has been this kind of inattention in terms of this area of the law or this area of medical practice. Push for laws and let them know that we are clamoring for it. So you can reach out to these organizations, all the supervisory authorities that cover the space, and also general awareness or general push through social media can also help to see improvements that we want to see in medical technologies, or to improve the medical data security in Nigeria. Sorry, maybe if I'll add one more. Last one will be that healthcare providers, who are the stakeholders in this space, or some of the stakeholders in this space, also need to adopt global standards. So if our laws in Nigeria are not catering to security or medical data security as they ought, healthcare providers can also adopt global standards to also ensure that they are protecting the data subjects or the patients within their care. And that way, once we have some organizations or top tier organizations who are pushing the frontiers of medical data security in Nigeria, the regulations would also follow suit. So that's another thing I would also include. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Owoyemi. It's been a very interesting discourse from your end. If you want to, learn more about what Ms. Owoyemi and her organization does, you can check out her LinkedIn link, which has been provided in the chat box, and also check out Tech Hives Advisory's website. Thank you so much once again for taking our time to be with us today. Next, we'll be moving to another doctor. We have with us Dr. Hameed Adediran. He's a medical doctor who is also a media practitioner. And we believe that as a doctor who is in the social media space, who has some social media presence, he's in the best position to speak to us about these issues because he navigates them firsthand. So I would like to call on Dr. Hameed Adediran to talk to us about ethical considerations in digital patient data management and the best practices for securing electronic health records, and also patient consent and confidentiality in telemedicine consultations. And finally, how he navigates patient confidentiality as a doctor with social media presence. Dr. Adediran, please.
Thank you very much. Please confirm you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Very
okay. Awesome. Thank you very much, the MedLaw Hub, for putting this together, and I hope that we're able to follow up on this and do a lot more around this. I also like to say that it's been an interesting time for me. I've been quietly listening, and at some point I was asking myself, okay, do I really still have to speak? I mean, it looks like there's a lot happening already. Yes, the social media is here and it's come to stay, and the practice is still the practice. Medicine is still medicine, and there's a lot that needs to do. I'm going to be sharing my experience that are not mostly personal. They'll just revolve around my work serving on the National Standing Committee on Ethics for the Nigerian Medical Association, and also attending the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria Disciplinary Tribunal. So more like I'll be sharing what I've seen happen. And then, of course, can I also confirm that I'm protected for whatever I say during this webinar? Because speaking after a lawyer sometimes can be scary. You really need to be sure that you're protected and whatever you say will or cannot be used against you. All
Just
right.
don't share patient information.
Okay.
You are.
Okay. Now that's satisfactory. Because it's always very impressive and interesting when you see doctors and lawyers discuss some of these fine prints and fine lines, especially at the tribunal. And I'm always there to, I mean, maybe because for me, it sounds funny, but when people ask me if you hadn't studied medicine, what would you have studied? My to go response is law. So for me, I find that quite interesting. Um, so I have a few slides to share, and I hope you find them useful. Um, Please confirm you can see my screen and that it's in the slideshow mode. Sorry, can anyone confirm my screen is visible and it's showing my deck in slideshow mode? Okay, can anyone confirm I'm still audible?
You're audible, it's
Yes.
visible,
Audible, and we can see your screen.
but it's
Oh,
not in the slideshow mode.
We can't see
Yeah.
the slideshow.
Yeah, I guess that's much. Okay, I'll stop sharing. Sorry. And no, sorry, I'm not old school. I'm Gen Z. Well, maybe not, maybe a few years before. So I'm not trying to sound like an old person that doesn't know how to put slides in slideshow mode. By now, I'm sure it's slideshow mode. Confirm, please.
Yes, it is.
Aha. Yes, this is digital era. So, for me, a lot has been happening. We're trying to catch up in all ramifications because the number of litigations happening at the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria is a lot more. I know that the panel that sits to review petitions from the public have been quite busy these days. I know that other organs of the law have been busy as well. I got reports that the National Assembly Committee on Public Complaints have also had some petitions against doctors. And of course, Dr. Simi also flagged what a trend has been happening on social media these days where, everybody just comes and tries to educate the public, but in the process, sometimes can go into some details that may not cut across. So the presentation, or let me just say my talk today, would revolve around ethical considerations and how do we secure our electronic health records, consent and confidentiality in telemedicine, and of course, navigating patient confidentiality. I'll be switching from sounding like a doctor to sounding like an advisor to sounding like a patient or the general public within the, how many minutes do I have now?
Less than 15 minutes, so hopefully.
Oh, okay. That's a lot. I'm trying to reduce how much talk I speak these
Okay.
days, so that will help. So now, electronic health record, it's slightly different from electronic medical record, but that's not why we're here. So I'll just I'll stick to this. Is a record of patient's medical details. It has the history, and in medicine, when we say history, we don't mean that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. We mean what has been happening to you health-wise before today. So, and going into the details. So we ask questions, family and social history, past medical history. Are you diabetic? Are you hypertensive? Are you a non-sickle cell patient? Do you take alcohol? Do you smoke? Um, have you been pregnant before? What was the outcome of the pregnancy? How many abortions? Um, Physical examination, we go into as much details as we are able to do. We do investigations. What does the lab test say? What does your chest x-ray say? And all of that. And keeping all of these in digital formats. Now, this is increasingly being implemented in many developing countries, including Nigeria. I mean, it's been in existence in most developed countries before now, but yeah, we're trying to play a catch up, and most hospitals in Nigeria now use the EHR. And the idea is that it helps to improve the quality of healthcare, and it's also cost effective, so you don't carry papers around. And the tendency, expectedly, of your case notes being missing, or a portion of it being, flipping out of the folder, is reduced. However, we need to know that this has also potentially introduced some hazards. And so safety of information in our system, it has been a real challenge. And yes, a lot has been happening and people have been asking questions. So what are the ethical considerations when you use in the digital era in terms of seeking healthcare? Privacy and confidentiality, security breaches, system implementation, and data inaccuracy. Now, privacy and confidentiality is a core of the medical practice. Whether digital or not, the privacy and confidentiality is something we don't joke with. And I always, when people ask about the extent of privacy and confidentiality, I tell them that for some of us, we may appear to be on the extreme. And I'll give you an instance. My uncle, my father's older brother, was in the hospital where I trained. And I helped him around, I took him around, I knew exactly what was wrong with him and all of that. And many more weeks later, my father saw me and said, "Oh, my brother said he saw you at the hospital and you were quite helpful." I said, "Yes. But we've seen it a number of times afterwards and you never mentioned it to me." I said, "Yes, because if I mention it to you, you're going to ask me what's wrong. And I'm not going to tell you that." "But he's my brother." I said, "Yes, he's your brother. If he tells you that he's at the ENT clinic, that's on him. But I'm not going to say, oh, your brother came to the ENT clinic. But that's the issue." So that's not my business. That's not my responsibility. And that's what I'm sure Dr. Simi was trying to mention. We don't get emotional when it comes to the practice. It's none of your business that a woman is HIV positive and is married and is living with the husband. And you're like, so this woman will go home now and infect the husband. You are not jollof rice. I wanted to say you're not Jesus Christ, but you're not jollof rice. So you don't owe the husband the responsibility of, quote unquote, preventing him from contracting any infection. It's none of your business. And again, it's been the reason a lot of people have been dragged to the tribunal, because they just discovered that what was supposed to be restricted to them is being extended to the family, and then they have family issues afterwards. And people are like, okay, how did my uncle know that this is happening? So now, what is privacy? I'm not a fan of going into English. I don't speak a lot of English, but for context, this is how we're being privacy. And it's the fact that an individual has a right to keep information about themselves from being disclosed to others. And when we say others, we mean others. Like Dr. Simi mentioned, a 15-year-old does not, you don't have to say, "So, ma, I have prescribed these medications to your daughter. Make sure she uses it." It's none of your business. You have told this person what to do. If the person needs a reminder in the mother, please, by all means. But you're not, or we treat a patient and we say, your father has been coming back because he keeps taking sugar when we warned him not to take sugar. So make sure that he doesn't take sugar any longer. No, that's not your business. If and only if you are given the permission by the patient, okay, actually, I have a problem with self-discipline. Do you want to explain this to my husband, my wife, my child? I have I can't retain everything you said now. I will forget everything. But my son is outside. Can I call in him so that I can explain this to him? That is entirely on the patient himself. Now, the information shared as a result of clinical interaction is considered confidential and must be protected. And that is a rule, it's a rule of thumb. So you're not, there is nothing that allows you to just, lose the, I like the way Dr. Simi mentioned it, even though as a doctor practicing in Nigeria, my heart was doing bim because it now looks like we'll have more aluta against us. It's happening already, but it might be worse. Because you just go to, you see in the hospital, someone just comes and says, hey, how far with that patient with gonorrhea? And I'm like, how did that even happen? How does that even happen? So information of a patient should be released to others only within the permission by law. And the key to preserving confidentiality is to allow only authorized individuals to have access to information. And authorized individuals are vary. And I feel that we also have the responsibility as practitioners to also educate, because in our training schools, we're probably trained on all of these things as a doctor, a nurse, a physiotherapist, a nutritionist, but we can't say the same of the admin staff or the IT guy. So it is a responsibility for us, of every healthcare provider to make sure that everyone is on the same page and that only authorized individuals. So who are these authorized individuals? You have to define them. So this sounds so much like a component that speaks to the general practice. And so that's why I'm being very generic in this conversation. So we move into some digital part now. I've mentioned it, that when it comes to EHRs, we need to now take the understanding a notch higher and our confidentiality a notch higher. Because it's possible that I sit in my house and I'm telling you that, do you know that this person is schizophrenic? It's mad. You doubt me, wait. And then let me show you evidence. You bring out your phone, you log in, and then you show the history. It happens. It might happen. Now, it means that as a healthcare provider, the responsibility is on you. And I'm sure that has been mentioned a lot of times now on this webinar. Things should be on need-to-know basis. So you need to have a lot of control. And I've had that issue with a number of EHR companies that I've sought my advice or I've had to recommend to my clients. Because I'm saying I can't see how that lady, that front desk person, that customer care person does not have access to all my information as a patient in your hospital. Why does she need to know all of that? So security breaches threaten patient privacy. And so we need to, the responsibility is also on us to provide methods to ensure that we don't share information without the consent indiscriminately, without the patient's consent indiscriminately, or without authorization from the judge, from the magistrate, or a court summon, and all of that. How do we do this? Cloud storage, password protection. I'm not an IT guy, but if you must use the EHR, these are questions you need to ask your IT provider, your vendor. Do you have this? Do you have that? And also usage of two-factor authentication, tokens, password. All these help you to have digital trail. So if there's a leak, I can trace it and say that the last time this patient's record was accessed was at 4:50 p.m. Instablog published that story with the greatest respect to that platform. At exactly 5:30 p.m. So I can look for who accessed the information at that time and begin to trace it. So we need to ensure data integrity. And also, that is all. The first one is about deliberate breach of security. But how about we did not know, we just had, so we were hacked into, our server was hacked into, and that's why we had a security breach. To prevent this, you must be able to show that you have strong firewalls, antivirus software, and intrusion detection software. Also, is that every user must have a unique ID, like I said, that can be traced. Okay. Now, EHRs, another thing is data inaccuracy. So yes, I have personally been a victim of this. I just got to the lab and they told me that the doctor asked me to come the next day without fasting. And I'm like, why? Go and talk to the doctor. And when I got back to the doctor, I discovered that instead of prescribing, I think, malaria test, he actually said they should test for blood sugar, a fasting blood sugar, I think. And because it was just easy to click, 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 click. In the past, we write out, but now you click. So before you click, you have a drop down. You want to click this, and then you mistakenly click another one. So it's possible that, there's data inaccuracy. Before, we have a way we write on our case notes. Now people try to type quickly. Some people are not that fast, and in the process, you're not sure whether this is 2 or 1. Is this I or Roman numeral 1, Roman figure 1, all those kind of issues. So loss and destruction of data can also occur. I have people who have had this problem migrating platforms. They've been on this platform, they're not happy. The guys at the back end are refusing to release the core data, and back and forth. So you lose track of your patient history because you have to switch. And sometimes people are stuck to these vendors because of these reasons. Now, how do we secure electronic health records? We can have encryption. That's a technical side that I won't go deeply into. We also need to educate every of our staff. And this is where I'm going to be very keen on, because it's not going to avail you that there's a complaint against your hospital, and then you go to the panel or you go to where you have been asked questions and you say, honestly, I don't know. But signing by is not an excuse. So you would have to educate all your staff. Everybody that has the potential to have access to patients' records must be educated on why it has to be, patient's confidentiality has to be strictly adhered to. Then perform risk assessments regularly. One of the things I do for my clients is mystery client visits. So I do some troubleshooting. So at some point, I'll just ask someone to go. In fact, I'll ask someone who knows someone in the hospital to say, can you reach out to this person? The way the question I once asked, call this person and say, please, can I quickly confirm this about this my patient, or this my uncle, or this my friend? Or call and say, my husband has a case note with you, but we're in the hospital now, and the doctor is asking XYZ, can you confirm? It's not for you to ask to confirm to that relative. It is for you. Every information about the patient has to be for the patient. And of course, perform updates and patch systems. You don't keep the system the way it is and expect everything to be the same. Telemedicine consultation is a realm that has landed a lot of doctors in trouble these days because they just want to be nice. And sometimes we forget that, and in fact, and another interesting part is that in the digital world, and a lot of tech guys are delving into telemedicine platforms, and it's still a debate I've been having with many of them. Can a tech person set up a telemedicine platform, or it has to be a doctor? And the question, my response is very simple. Can a rich businessman set up a hospital, or it has to be a doctor? So the fact that you're a tech person doesn't give you that power, because there are fine lines that you must tread carefully beyond the fact that you can put things on a computer or on a tablet. So your consultation must mimic what happens in the hospital. So what you're going to do in the hospital, you do it online. What you're not going to do, you don't do it. And I'll give an instance here. Your patient has to be able to give informed consent in a written format that you can present anywhere. that, oh, please, I give you permission to do this, or I accept liability for all of this. Otherwise, it could actually be used against you, and it's being used against many doctors these days. And let me also say that our laws are not as archaic as they are. Yes, from the front end, that's what they appear to be, but a lot of work is going on, and all we're waiting for is for all this to be rolled out. You won't wait for the laws to be updated and rolled out before you start taking precautions. Now, how do we navigate patient confidentiality? I'm wrapping up now. First, you need to understand the laws and the regulations. Every doctor upon graduation is given a book, the Code of Medical Ethics. Every doctor is expected to read this tenaciously, because there are things in it that a lot of doctors only get to know when they run foul of it. And they're like, oh, really? I didn't know, because we know how things go a lot of times in this part of the world. What we know or what is right may be different from what you see practiced every day. So if you get carried away by the everyday practice, and the long arm of the law, or the short one as the case may be, I don't have a measure for the length of the law, catches up on you, you will have yourself to blame, and there will be ignorance would not be an excuse. Also, use secure methods and devices. People have asked, why do we have to always use the hospital system? I think they should be able to put this on our phone so that we can quickly have access. And I'm like, no, that's dangerous. Respect patient preference and diversity. And of course, always obtain informed consent and authorization. This, I can't say it enough. And of course, finally, limit access and disclosure. I feel glad whenever I'm asked about this on how to limit access, what every level of staff need and every level of the team member needs to know or have access to. You don't have to be nice. If someone does not have access and you need a higher access, it doesn't cost you anything to escalate it if it's that important. But if we just say, sometimes we just want to do this very quickly, we just want to write, you have to be very sure, because you may actually be in trouble. And in conclusion, it is important to ensure patients' privacy and confidentiality. It's as important, it's as good as providing medical services to those patients. Respecting their privacy is as good as providing the care itself. And so it should always be adequately protected. That's their data. This will help prevent medical legal issues and ensure quality of healthcare. So we don't have to also sit on the edge every time because we're seeing patients. But at the same time, we just need to be a bit more responsible to the care of these patients when it comes to confidentiality and privacy, especially when it comes to digital era. You have a WhatsApp platform, you just drop messages. Okay, ask questions and I'll reply. And people are asking questions and you're answering directly. You need to be very careful. Or Facebook or any other social media platforms. We need to be very careful about this, because it would not be enough to say, but she just gave me the information online herself. No. It's expected of you to know better than the patient. And trust me, the patient can actually turn around and use that against you. Meanwhile, you were just trying to be nice or try to be the public doctor. What do we call that? That's about my brief talk this afternoon. I'm happy to take any question that may be asked, and anyone I don't know, I'll pass it on. Thank you very much, and over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adediran. Thank you for, going in depth and explaining from your point of view as a consultant and also as a medical doctor. If there are any questions, you can put them in the chat box or just signify by raising up your hand, and we'll call you to ask your question. In the meantime, I'm going to be dropping Dr. Adediran's social media. I see we have a question. I'll come to you very shortly. I'm going to be dropping Dr. Adediran's social media contact in the chat box, his website, so you can reach out to him or click to learn more about what he does. Then I'm also going to be dropping a form, an assessment form, just to assess this webinar so far and see whether you're indeed having a good time. Thank you so much, our audience, for being here with us today. I'm having a good time, and I trust you are too. Erere Ayeno, can you please unmute yourself so that you'd ask your question? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Hello?
Very well. Yes, yes.
Good afternoon.
Okay, my question is on basically you mentioned something about, let's say a wife has, or a woman has HIV, or a man has HIV, and they don't have the right to tell the partner. So my question is basically the Code of Medical Ethics provides for, there's a part where it says about maybe exceptions and about protecting the community from danger. Would you say that that's like a valid argument from, let's say, someone that like, would you say it's a valid argument to be able to tell people that, let's say, that the person is sleeping with, to protect them from getting that disease? Because I watched a Grey's Anatomy. I know it's not a real show, but like in the show, the person had gonorrhea, and then I don't know if it's a form, but like they were told to go and inform their partners, like the people that they've been sleeping with before. So would you say that's like a valid argument? I know it's not a real show, but yes.
No, so let me just quickly respond to that. Your last part explains my point. They were asked to go and inform their partners. So I can counsel you and sit on you until you are convinced that you should declare your status to your partner. It's within my powers. But I'm not going to check your case notes, look for the contact of your next of kin, call and say, hello, just consider me anonymous. Your wife is coming home now. Ensure that you stay away from her, or ask questions. I'm not going to say much. I'm not going to say everything. No, that's inciting. And yes, it could actually be used against you. Now, the exception about the public is not as simple as someone is diagnosed of COVID, and then I go out and say, I go to the nearest cable network or go on YouTube. I say, ladies and gentlemen, if you live around Ujelegba, please go back to your house now and lock the door. A certain person by name, or sometimes we even try to feel like we're trying to veil the name. A man just traveled from Asaba to Lagos and has just landed. Of course, how many people were on that flight? But someone was coughing in flight. So from there, it could be traced, and they can confirm the identity. So you avoid it. If you have to do that in the interest of the public, there are channels to follow. Disease surveillance notification officer has to be involved somewhere, the state epidemiologist, or at the local government level, the equivalent, and so on and so forth. And there is a way the declaration has to be made. It's not for you on your own to say, oh, let me protect the public. No, you're not empowered to know what is in the public interest, so to say, because a lot has to go into that. I don't know if my response made sense.
Thank you very much for that. I see that Joy, I'm sorry, has a question. So can you please unmute and ask your question? Thank you.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. We can hear you.
Yes, please. So I would love to know. I would want to say thank you once again, Mr. Dr. Hameed Adediran, for this insightful lecture. I have a question. I have questions rather. So I won't bore you with my question though. I have questions. So number one is I want to know if do we have any medical committee that you can report something like maybe a data, maybe when your data privacy has been divulged without your permission? Do you have a committee, medical committee or medical council that you report to for professional conduct that are unethical? That's number one. Number two, I have a current situation in my company where I work for. So there was a workplace injury in the construction site.
I hope
And
you're not about to divulge any
no, I'm
personal.
not diverging. I'm not diverging.
I'm
So
just
the main
saying.
thing is that I want to know, let me put it in summary. I want to
Okay.
know what can be done in cases of medical negligence where you fully paid for a medical services and you don't get the expected, the surgical procedure is not done accurately and it's deteriorating and they are still demanding for more bills and bringing unnecessary bills as well. So what can be done in the case of medical negligence? The first one was, is there a medical council or a medical committee one can report for data privacy, unlawful data privacy issues like that? So then the second one on medical negligence. What's your opinion on that? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. To answer your question straight up, the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria is empowered to review and discipline and sanction any erring medical practitioner in Nigeria. And I'm happy to surprise everyone that this is the only body that has that power. And so it's always interesting when you hear that consumer protection, whatever, are sitting to review. Even in the law courts, it still has to differ to what the council says. And the tribunal has powers as high as that of the High Court. Whatever decision the tribunal makes can only be reversed by the Court of Appeal. Now, how accessible are they? Every state's Ministry of Health has a directorate or a Department of Medical Services, and the law makes every director of medical services or equivalent a member of the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. So what it means is that wherever you are, if you have any complaints, you can always reach out to this, just go to your Ministry of Health, ask for the medical Department of Medical Services or hospital services, as the case may be, and make your complaints. But it has to be formal. You have to write a petition. You have to attest. So I mean, you can't do it anonymously or just. And that's why sometimes when I see people come on social media, which again, let me flag this, is largely the difference between our practice here in Nigeria and in most other part of the world. A lot of times we just make a lot of noise without necessary action. So something happens to you, you go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, you go on YouTube, you go on TikTok, because a lot of times the motivation is to gather views and get clicks and all of that. But if you really want results, that's all you need to do. Just write and you'll be surprised. The person would, I mean, the issue would actually be dealt with. And honestly, there are lots of even high profile cases that have been reviewed and dispensed of with. Now, in the case of medical negligence, and that's one of the reasons cases of medical negligence can only be tried at this tribunal, because the person to define medical negligence is a medical doctor. So you can't, what you consider negligence may not actually be negligence. I've been in a team before that a patient was operated upon, and after the death of the patient, the team members were berated for operating on that patient. It sounds ironic, right? But yeah, like, you have no business operating this patient. That's it. So sometimes we think that we need you doctors, you've collected money, you need to do more, we need to see action, we need to see things being done. But if, for instance, the parameters, let's say the patients in question now, the surgery is being proposed, but the parameters are not favorable. The blood chemistry is not showing me enough that I can put this patient under anesthesia. There is an ongoing infection that I need to treat and be sure is well treated before opening up the patient. If I go ahead, I'm going to just spread the patient, like release like a cannonball. So sometimes those are the considerations that a doctor would now have to explain to the panel, following which they will now get to the tribunal, And if the explanation is satisfactory, then the person is let go. If not, then the person is punished. And trust me, a lot of doctors are currently either serving punishment or have self punishment. In fact, a lot of it is happening now these days. And so all you need to do is just make the right complaints to the right channels, the right quarters, and you'll be definitely sorted. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much
much.
for updating. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's asked questions. We're gradually coming to the end of our webinar. Thank you to those who have stayed till now. But before
The
we
lawyer
go,
is raising his hand, though.
oh, okay, there's
See
a
what I'm
okay,
saying now?
okay.
And the
Oh,
No,
lawyer
I
is
mean, just calm down. I'm not coming for you. Don't worry. All right. So I wanted to add a bit to what Amit mentioned. I don't know if he stated it as well. Previously I mentioned the Data Protection Commission. So that's another body you can report to get redresses for when there has been a breach or an infringement to your data protection rights or your privacy right and whatnot. So I wanted to just add that bit so that you can also put that down. The Data Protection Commission, the NDPC, is another body you can report to. It's not related to, it's not excluded to just medical or health records. Any kind of data protection breach can be reported to the Data Protection Commission. So that's it for me. Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you. So very quickly, so that we don't spend so much time here, I'll be moving on to our very last speaker for today. He's just going to speak to us very briefly, share some insights, and give some words about the Medical Law Hub. His name is Mr. Damilare Adeoye. He is the host of this webinar, and he's also the founder of the Medical Law Hub. So, Mr. Adeoye, please.
Thank you very much. I think the field has been covered, so I'm going to be skipping so many things. The speakers have done justice to today's webinar already. I'm just going to be emphasizing more on the medical legal areas that I think it's important we touch. But kudos to good job from the doctors, data protection experts. In fact, I've learned from their presentation myself. So I'm going to go straight to what I have to present so I don't waste our time because I can see we are already behind time. Um, so I'm going to be briefly speaking on the medical legal perspective to everything we've heard so far. And like I said, I'll make it really brief. Um, I won't be speaking much on about the org because of our time. But if you want to know more about us, please visit our social media handles, Medical Law Hub, and check our websites. We address anything medical legal in nature, from telemedicine down to basic public health issues. Um, I hope I'm audible enough, please. I want to be sure I'm not speaking to myself. Okay. So my style will be a bit different. I want it to be a bit interactive, even within this short time, and I will be bringing few cases, scenarios from the social media, and what we can relate with. I'm going to be jumping so many things, not to waste our time, but I want us to be part of this conversation. So I have screenshots from the internet. Um, you know, introduction, yes, it is very important in this changing digital world. How do we ensure that patient confidentiality is still a thing where nobody can just access it? Our speakers have really addressed these issues from from different angles. So I'm more particular about these cases. I'm sure that majority of us, if not all of us, are aware of the Junior Pope's case. And a nurse actually made a video, a live video, not of Junior Pope, but of his wife, when the wife was unconscious and was taken to their hospital. Also, Junior Pope was videoed live when it was happening in the hospital, and these issues raise very concerning ethical raises ethical concerns that we need to address. Um, so these are just few of the pictures, and this is the aftermath. A friend to Junior Pope said today, I paid condolences visit to the family, and I would tell you that social media has messed lots of things up for his mom. Emphasis on social media. May he find rest and may the family be consoled. I can only share these pictures because they're already in the public domain. If not, I'm sure I would have been more careful, but it's something everybody can access easily. Hence why I didn't think twice before using it in my presentation. We also can remember the recall service case. Same thing, video inside the hospital environment. And that seems like not an issue. I find that disturbing. And these are the questions I have for us. Just yes or no. Um, yes or no, you can just thumbs up if you think it is yes or no. Is there anything wrong with the pictures that the screenshots that I showed us now? Do you find anything wrong with them? Just a thumbs up or a yes in the comment. Do we find anything wrong with them? Now let's even move from the basics. Let's now ask this question: is it legal? Do you find this legal? Is it something that is considered it's wrong or not wrong? There's nothing the law can do about it. Is it legal? If you think it is legal, let's thumbs up. Okay, I believe not. Is it ethical? Now we are talking about professionally, because when we are saying wrong and right, it's just basic. But ethical, now we are bringing the profession into play. Is it ethical? Thumbs up if it is ethical. And just one or two people quickly. What would you have done differently if you are in the shoes of the professionals? Just in 1 minute, what would you have done different? Please let me randomly, someone can just talk, or maybe we can have a doctor just say in 1 minute. What would you have done different? Dr. Ahmed.
So yeah, what would I have done differently if I were in their shoes?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, please. Just
Okay.
1 minute. Just
Yeah.
for also a
Yeah.
practical view. Yes.
So definitely, I wouldn't take pictures at all. That's it. And I would refrain from discussing it at all. And I will just refer you to the example I gave of my uncle, who I saw in the hospital. I had no business even discussing. This is where I'm going. So discussing it with my father would lead me to where I may not want to go. So why discuss it at all? What do I want to gain by telling him that I saw his brother? How could these few points of mine have been able to?
Thank you so much. Straight to
Yeah.
the point. Thank you so much for that. So I'm not going to be going too deeply into this laws because the data protection expert have addressed it, and Dr. Ahmed as well addressed this. So I just highlighted them. So it is not legal, it is not ethical, and these are the things I want to highlight to us in my presentation. So we have the laws there, we have the ethical, book there, like Dr. Ahmed said, we have the code of medical ethics to guide our professionals, medical professionals, to ensure that they uphold the confidentiality of their patient. And data protection, we have the National Information Technology Development Agency to look into that. We also have the National Health Act that emphatically says you need to protect your patient's data. So briefly, we're going to be highlighting the sections. The establishes 26 of the National Health Act establishes the duty of healthcare providers that you must maintain confidentiality of patient information. It's a legal obligation. Section 27 says that circumstances under which may be disclosed if the patient consents to it. All our speakers have said that, and or if it is required by the law. Also, 28 provides that there's guidelines for the protection and security of health records. So it's not just about what you say. Also, you need to protect the records you have within your domain, whether it's online or offline. That's to be properly protected. The data protection regulation also has, these these regulations for us. These things have been addressed, so I'm just going to scroll through them because we have limited time. And you know, Dr. Hamid addressed electronic records as well. It needs to be addressed. Unauthorized access. He also spoke about telemedicine and data privacy. We have the NDPR for us to look into that. And so there are laws to simplify it. There are laws in place to ensure that we don't go outside our boundary as professionals or even as citizens. Confidential information. So here is, where I'm actually heading to. What can we do? What can we do? And this is one of the things we do on the medical hub when we engage clients and in our awareness campaign. The question we must find answers is what are the strategies? Because now when we are talking about confidentiality, it's really on the expert. Because an ignorant patient or citizen can remain ignorant, but the person the law will really catch are the data controllers, which can, it can be the health professional, health institution, or whoever is in charge of it. So, what are the strategies they can put in place to ensure that these things, they don't fall victim or they are not caught by law for, revealing details or information they are not supposed to? So, the first thing is comprehensive data protection policies. Now in Nigeria, we react more than we act, and it's troubling because year in year out we keep seeing issues on these things and nothing is being done. And this is because there are no policies in place. And when I say policies, it's not even the government policy now or the state policy. We are talking about the institution, hospitals having policy in place for how to handle patient information that in order for it to comply with the available laws. Because every staff must be trained. Dr. Amin said something about this is not limited to even health professionals. Also, it extends to the administrative part of the health institutions and even the drivers. A driver who is not knowledgeable about these things can easily go home and say, do you know? I mean, ambulance driver can go home and just be telling everybody about, what happened at work. So everybody, it's a big ecosystem that no one must be left behind. And this is why policies must be in place, and not just be in place, they must be trained in this, you know, in this area. Now, I will not belabor us with electronic health records. It has been said, encryption need to update because these things, cybersecurity is a big issue now that we cannot just relax and sleep on it. So it must be updated regularly to ensure that there is no breach because the data controller, the hospital, the health institution will always be held responsible. Access control, who has access to what? That has already been addressed as well. Um, and then monitoring audits, yes, because sometimes we feel like we have everything in place and then we leave it on till it is too it has gone too far. So there must be an audit system whereby you can go back and be certain that these things are protected, patients record are not let out easily, and who have can gain access to them. Now, this is another thing that is very important. There must be periodic and constant training and awareness of our healthcare staff and people in that ecosystem. If that is not in place, it is inevitable because cybersecurity experts will always tell you that you have to always be on the lookout. So because everything is now being digitalized, so if these things are not put in place, problem is always looming. In fact, a cybersecurity expert would say that you can't really prevent it like forever. But what you can do is you can mitigate the effects of breaches when they happen. So all these things are important to put, to safeguard patient data and information. Secure channel as well. How do you get your information across? Is it WhatsApp? Is it, because we have to be very, very careful of these things. Dr. Ahmed said that thing as well, where you reply to messages on WhatsApp and you are not concerned about who sees what. We have to be very conscious of that. In fact, even emails now, there are some companies that will tell you it is not safe to send um, patients information through email. It is that serious. Yes. So we need to look at that. Another thing, and this next one actually focuses more on telemedicine, e-health, whereby you bring in a tech expert, a tech bro, to come and install all these devices in your hospital. What are the agreements in place? How are you able to access the risk that can bring to the you know to the health institution? So there's a need to put agreements in place and to really check. Risk assessment is very important, to ensure that at the end of the day, you don't endanger your patients, or let out information that are sensitive. And then, like I said, the some things are inevitable, and one of it is that you know data breaches always happen and will always continue to happen. So how are you able to mitigate the effects? So there must be proper planning in this regard to ensure that when things happen, you are able to respond swiftly. We could go out and talk about the system failure from our banks recently. Um, the first speaker, the second speaker said something about how you're able to respond, because these things have to be in place, have to be compact. Our banks failed us, or have been having issues around this area whereby the the system fails, you can't do transaction. And when she was speaking, she mentioned something about integrity, availability, all those triads. Now it has been extended to even like four things that are important: integrity, confidentiality, compliance, and all those things must be in place. And on a final note, um, when we implement these strategies, hospitals, health professionals can strengthen their effort to protect patients' privacy in the digital age. And then, most importantly, build trust. If there's anything lacking in our society in Nigeria today, it is this trust building, in the healthcare ecosystem, which is important because patients need to feel comfortable revealing their personal information, health information to doctors and hospitals. So these strategies will ensure that, because patients can see it, it is transparent that, okay, even if something happens, okay, there's a way to mitigate the effect. And finally, safeguarding patients' confidentiality requires a multifaceted approach. So one of the things we emphasize is collaboration. For instance, when you see the nature of the members of the medical law, you won't just find lawyers here. We have doctors, we have nurses, we have different experts in you know in their own profession, and then we cross fertilize ideas, because only through that can we come up with proper laws, ideas that that will really influence the society positively. So we all have roles to play, in ensuring compliance. The laws are there, and we can always improve on them. There was a time I was really big on the need to have a telemedicine law in Nigeria. Um, and I think I even came up with a draft, but I'm still praying that that is a thing, because there's a need for us to have specific laws that address specific issues in the country. So thank you very much, and that would be all from me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeoye. Thank you for going straight to the point and, just explaining and saying all the things that we need to hear here. So we've come to the end of our program, of our webinar. Thank you so much for our audience that are still, I hope we do not have any questions. 1 minute. Okay. So thank you. I want to ask if we have questions, but we are really, really behind schedule, and I would not want to keep anybody later than they should be here. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our engaging audience. Thank you to our wonderful speakers. You've really done justice to this topic. And I would implore our audience to go and check the links of our speakers and their social media and website, and visit their website and social media to engage more with them and the work they do. Thank you so much. You can also visit the Medical Law Hub website and social media accounts to engage with Medical Law Hub and then find out more about the work we do. Thank you once again for joining us, and we hope that you'll be able to join us on our next webinar. Thank you. Have a good
And
week.
thank you to all our speakers for coming around. Really grateful to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye.
Thank you.